Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. The title is When Memories Visit You. And I felt it suited the talk that I put a picture of two giant robots fighting. Because that's what it feels like. um, actually, the subtitle. Just hang in there. Okay, there we go. I fixed it. When memories visit you, what is this idea of a memory visiting someone? We feel usually we got to create the memory by experiencing a moment of life, and then we have access to the memory. Now, could the mind of the person, could what is behind your eyes be some sort of uh, antenna for multidimensional experience of a singular existence? I feel it is. I feel that we are just like aware of stuff flying in the environment. What does that mean? That means you see birds in the sky. If you were an astronaut, you'd see space debris and whatever in outer space. So, in the objective realm, in front of our eyes, there's stuff moving through the space. Behind our eyes, what is there? That is the question. And I've had, recently, I had one view on it where it's as if imagine your body was transparent in a subtler dimension, and anything going through it you could feel as a thought or whatever. I mean, of course, I'm just brainstorming here, but I'm going to tell you the context where I experienced a memory visiting me. In yoga, later on, I found this. I experienced this in 2014, really, around that time. Between 2011 and 14 was like the most unique moment of my life. Was the most unique time I was alive. For now, at least. But in yoga, they say the yogi, the practitioner, the truth seeker, the sadhu, you're not just meant to do these practices blindly. You're not just even meant to do them with hope. You do it with a sort of intuition. Now, that intuition, the yogis would call the divine remembrance, and it would occur after you notice something about reality that felt unchanging to you. And after a while, once you discover the unchanging nature of how energy cannot be created or destroyed, believe it or not, it just changes. Once you see that energy is changing, we will stop judging energy. And energy will be like, thank God. You see, there's so many ways to evoke the world, and that's what language is. And a memory feels like an internal evocation. It feels like the world is talking to you in a way only you can hear. Sometimes I've wondered, I got stunned one day because I realized I was kind of upset about certain things that had happened in my life, and then I just realized you telling me, just like how, what is it, you make four moves in chess and you have access to, like, what is the number? Like a ridiculous amount of moves. And I was thinking, could it be that after the first couple decisions of my life was set into a motion and it's like branching out like a tree never seen before. I feel when a human being is remembering something, it's as if like it's like you're a tree. It's like how you've branched out into this existence, you know? Every experience a branch, every experience something new emerging. Because if there isn't something new, we can't even tell the experience has ended. That means if we were living in a painting, we would never know. We would never know if there's something else. But because it seems like we're living in a film, things change. New actors come in. New people emerge from humanity. And that's the beautiful thing. It's as if human beings they spend their whole life, and imagine a person's effort through a lifetime is like them writing a sentence, and they don't finish it. They don't finish it, but then years later, other people come and are born, and they come and finish that work. You know, a notable figure that comes to mind is Guru Padmasambhava from Tibetan Buddhism. This man wrote the book, Tibetan Book of the Dead, and he hid it. He hid the book in some place, and he made a prophecy that some people would find it. He was so conscious. This man was so conscious that he wrote something people were not ready for with an intuitive trust that someone will find it. And someone did. And that's the beautiful thing about this world. The more intelligence there is, the more that intelligence echoes. We're the intelligence of the planet right now. And I don't mean we're more intelligent like like we define intelligence. I mean we're part of the intelligence of the planet. You don't know how many ways thought moves. You don't know how many ways language has lived on this earth and lived in people's eyes. Okay, nice. It was showing one person listening, now it's 8 people. Okay. I'm gonna share with you guys a story, and it's from my own hand. It's a science fiction story I've written, and I'm gonna tell you a chapter where a memory visits this character. This is pretty much I realized that in these talks, because I'm speaking to an audience, I'm prioritizing humanity first and then abstraction to some degree. But in my science fiction, I prioritize abstraction first, then humanity. And in my science fiction, the book is called The Messenger of Giants. It will be out one day, and hopefully, it will be entertaining. The story begins. First of all, it's hilarious. All right, guys, I'm just gonna tell it. I know you might not be here for the science fiction stories, but I feel just for the sake of the title of this episode, I have to say it. The science fiction world, whenever you write a story, you're building a world. You're, in some sense, space, time, and the possibilities and what you can allow, it's all in your hand. So I wrote the science fiction book called The Messenger of Giants, and in it, there's a main character named Rasoul. And I'm not going to explain why I chose the names. That's a mystery I've left for the audience. I mean, some of them I will explain. But the main character's name is Rasoul, Rasoul. And Rasoul, the first chapter of the book, starts with his dream. He's in a dream, and in a dream, he's listening to galaxies whisper. He's eavesdropping on a conversation with galaxies, and the galaxies speak to him. And he suddenly wakes up, and his girlfriend Galactica is there, and Galactica comes in the room, and Galactica is this incredibly beautiful blonde girl, but she's blind. But in the book, even though she's physically blind, she is the most all-seeing. She's one of the most all-seeing people in the book. That means she's blind, but she sees. She sees. Her mind's eyes are very open. And so Galactica comes and says, "What was the thing she says?" She says something like, "Did the galaxies whisper to you again?" Something like that. And Rasoul looks at Galactica and very casually says, I think I can't be in my body anymore. Very casually. Very casually, he's like, I think I gotta leave my body, you know? And so they talk, and there's some things that happen in that chapter that are between husband and wife. And so what happens is Galactica, later on you realize she is an important figure in the United Nations of this world I've created in the year 5025, this human version of a world. And there's a galactic sector, so there's many chapters of Galactica kinda enlightening humanity on how to cope, how to coexist with extraterrestrial life on Earth. You know, something like that. There's chapters. But anyways, here, back to Rasul. Rasul gets this dream. He hears galaxies speaking. He looks at his girlfriend when he wakes up and he says, I can't be in my, like something of this sort. I don't remember the exact line I wrote. But he says, I can't be in this form anymore. And so the next chapter, I've like most of the chapters, like an explanation of the backstory. But I'll tell you what happens, and this is how this chapter relates to the title, guys. Remember, when memories visit you. I'm trying to share that point through the story. So, in my story, New York City Wall Street, which currently is perceived as a corrupt place, has become the most sacred place. And in the second chapter, Rasul is walking in Central Park Square, and it's become the most sacred, holy place on earth in the year 5025. You know? Excuse me. So Rasul is walking in Central Park, and there's this rock in the middle of this river, I've imagined. And he goes there. And he goes and sits on that rock. And this is the part of the story, guys, which is the moral. This is as far as I'm going to tell. Unless people want to hear more, I'm going to just say enough to prove the point, the moral. So what happens is Rasul goes sits on this rock, and he decides to leave the Pure Lands. He decides to leave the Pure. He decides to walk towards the Pure Lands. And so he's sitting on a rock, and he decides taking steps. He's literally, this chapter in the book, Rasul is leaving his body. He's, as a human being, deciding to walk, get out of his body. Like literally, it's called Mahasamadhi in yoga. So the second chapter of the book, the main character is trying to Mahasamadhi out of this existence. Right? He's walking to the Pure Lands where he's no longer an individual being. Now, this is where, imagine a guy sitting on a rock, his eyes closed, his consciousness in his subtler body starts walking towards the Pure Lands, and this is where I say a memory visits him. A memory visits him, and it's a memory of his father. And his father, his name is Bismillah. I just named it that. I mean, again, I told you I can't explain the names of the characters that much. You know, some of them I can, but I can't. I don't want to say too much on. So Bismillah is a memory of his father who's passed away. Visits him, so he stops leaving his body. He stops Mahasamadhi, and he enters the memory instead. And that's the kind of example of a memory visiting him. If people in the chat section want to hear the the next chapter, where what is that memory that visits him, just let me know in the chat section. I'm gonna continue with the talk. So that was the thing. The memory visited Rasul. Uh, and in this life, I've experienced certain events, internal events that I have no explanation for. They don't even relate to the stuff I've seen externally. I've wondered how to process them. You know, I've even wondered what do I do when I experience something so that has deviated so much from reality in a conscious dream state. That means you have a dream, you're conscious of it. And It's really, believe it or not, we're not rational creatures because we don't have access to just one version of reality. We have access to how the inner realms want the outer realms to appear, and how the inner realms have seen other people perceive the outer realms. Do you know? That means so many times, I kind of noticed it in these talks, where, by the way, guys, a kind of note for anybody who's listening right now. At the end of this, there's going to be a Discord event. So if anybody wants to speak, stick around till then. And I think at the end of the talk, though, people have to talk. I'm going to be a bit. I don't know what this effort is. It's like on some level, yeah, matter is incredibly meaningless. When I look at that tree, I mean, what else can we do? It's just a tree. Matter's quality is being, you know. But what moves matter? The whole idea is it material or is it immaterial? And if there is a chance that what is moving the person as the person is an immaterial, attributeless field, then no language can penetrate its explanation. That means I'm that person in history saying we've reached the edge of our language threshold as a species. You know, language can only take us so far into dualistic realms and only give us access to infinity. You need duality to access infinity. That means if you're a person right now and you were like, I want to be infinite, you have to any being who studies these four dimensions I'm going to mention here right now, you can pilot through this plane of existence smoothly, and most likely your ears are already open to the logos. But these four dimensions, I call it ring of the absent heaven. If you can acknowledge these in your life, they're just things you notice. If you can notice these about reality in your own way experientially, and it's very important because mysticism is not just newsletters. Mysticism is when you engage life in a way where it sets into motion an alchemy, where the way you're moving in itself, as it's abided by an intuition, evokes, reminds you of the memory. So what it is how the yogi accesses the divine memory, is by, in some sense, this sort of, it's as you trust your intuition, you find yourself in the pattern. What does that mean? That means it's as if, like, imagine yourself to have a life before you were born, and as you are born now, it's like in this life you get a sense that you are in some other place simultaneously. the way you remember the way you remember your presence is not conceptual. This is why I was a bit startled, and still to this day I am very keen, because in metaphysics, there's some people who, for example, in yoga, you're going through space more. Okay, so that means there's a esoteric path towards liberation, where it is through matter. You got to move things in a certain way, and there's a path where it's as if you realize what you were before you move. Now I got aware of it from the other. I For me, it was as if when life slowed down, I noticed the simulations I was living in. You know, but for some people, it could be that when life speeds up, they notice the simulations they're living in. You know, your DNA is kind of like, think of it this way, a chemical that has never existed. And every moment you live, it's as if, like, the chemical that you are and the chemical that the world is, metaphorically, I'm using this, saying this, it's as if there's a chemical reaction. So I feel changed by every experience. Right now, even as I'm saying this talk, it's as if before I gave this talk, there was a silence where I was like, I'm not going to be the same person the moment I move. That's the thing. That we keep our selfhood. Individual consciousness, there's actually nothing that's individually conscious. It keeps itself individually conscious because it has a reference of collectivity first. That means here comes the ultimate question, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't have a world, could you be a self? I'll make that question of the day. Okay, guys, Dylan says something interesting, which I've kind of like, it's worth mentioning. Dylan says, I mean, the first part I don't truly understand, but the second part, he says, I think by 12G we will look alien to ourselves if we could see communication was. I mean, here, Dylan, that's an interesting comment. Let me tell you why. You are bringing up something which I had no idea that the audience, in some sense, here's the thing, only Terence McKenna I've heard kind of speak about language as a world. Not just Terence McKenna, in the Sufi Dervish tradition, and in how certain cultures, Eastern cultures, have perceived beyond the veils, there are dimensions where there are beings that are drawing this life. That means in certain mythologies, this world is the artwork of higher dimensions. You know? A round of applause for all this artwork. That means the religious man wondered how could God draw bad art, you know. So Dylan, I want to say thanks for sharing that because you see that's the point. I keep saying we're moving into the era of advanced communication. That means I keep envisioning an advanced civilization. I wonder what would happen to the user of technology and the technology itself. Language, its evolution is the technology evolving and the user of technology is evolving. That there could be a chance that how we speak to about ourselves could be what changes too quick and makes life feel weird, you know? Terence McKenna spoke about how an octopus, for example, it changes color on its skin. Now, take this in, folks. If the octopus changes color on its skin, Terence McKenna was like, it doesn't just take the color of what's behind it. It's not just camouflage color change. The octopus speaks through color. When it gets angry, it changes color. This was even seen in Walt Disney or something. Like, I remember seeing a cartoon like that as a kid when I was like super young. Something like that, where the octopus would change color. So that's the thing. The octopus, its language is its color change. That means it's changing its skin. And I feel that human beings, when they speak, they are changing their subjective skin. We are changing. It's like my skin is not just what's encapsulating all my organs in my body. Also, the skin of my identity is my how far subjectively I'm considering reality. Guys, something I'm going to share, by the way, if like I'm giving it in these talks, if you hear me say something that suddenly you get a unique angle of insight from, I would recommend sharing that so everybody in the chat section sees the insight, you know? I think that's interesting, you know? Because you can't talk about a complex thing without having that complexity echo in other people's minds in accordance to how they have kept their simplicity intact. That means when life gets too intense, it's like it's like somebody saying, how do you handle bad karma? You know, very easy. You don't let it get bad. So Jesse says we can literally change the tone of our skin just like an octopus can be red when mad or upset. Yeah, yeah. So that's exactly it. We are constantly changing it. So I feel our physical, our in front of our eyes, the objective self, this is static to some degree. This is like nature's program. My body right now, biological body, as much as I claim myself as the owner, I just appear through it. It's like the projector filming, the projector is necessary to be kept in a good condition for it to project the film, yet the projector has nothing to do with the film being projected through the projector. So the day when you realize your mind had nothing to do with your body, that's a day filled with soul. You know? I think even if you turn on the radio, you'd hear soul. You know, I noticed something very interesting about the nature of memory. Memory is happening in the same place where imagination is happening, and in the same place where ideas on the present are happening. Let me see, how can I say this? I've noticed imagination is like a private room. You know, for many people it's common. For me, it's a shocker. I was like, how come people can't see my thoughts? Am I not projecting them? Am I not, as archaic language says, am I not having the thought? Why can't people see? It's like if I move my hand in the air and there's people in the room, they would see it. But if I move in my mind, move my hand in the air, then nobody sees that hand. You know. And so I wondered why, and I realized imagination is your private office. It's like your private studio. I'm not joking. In stillness, you can move in your inner realms. You can move your inner realms, and you always are. You know, and when you also realize the content of it is not your choice all the time, that means man has to bring forth the warrior. The archetype of the warrior is going to resurface. You know, I find it very interesting. Back in the day, it was physical war and it was messed up. You would be living in a kingdom peacefully, you know, you'd go home, you'd see your daughters, you'd see your sons, you know. And then imagine suddenly the kingdom would be at siege. The kingdom would be at siege. And then the father would, you know, look at his children, look at his wife, and realize why what the meaning of life is in that moment and run to war. And that's the thing. And the war now is no longer physical. Any human being physically violent, you are missing out on your evolutionary mind. You're missing out on how incredible the mind is. I'm telling you, you let the body be like a shield, let the mind be like a sword. Okay? That means let the body be as graceful and gentle, and there's something that people don't realize about violence. It's a scar, it's an interference. You know what that means? That means when a human being suffers, it's like an airplane goes turbulent. Everybody who knows that being suffers. You know? I wonder, could we be advanced? And I realized, like, what about the hedonism of culture? What about this constant need to be like, fuck it, it's too big, there's no point, there's extinction at the end, it's inevitable, why build an advanced civilization? Let's just, you know, rest on a palm beach and kind of like look at the clouds. You know, that's the thing. Now the war is an inner war, and the inner war is who is dictating your value. Is your past dictating your value? Is your future dictating your value? Is your value just hovering in the present wherever it goes? That's your value? What is the value? Guys, there's some great comments in the chat section. I feel I should read them out for everybody. But the names are hilarious. Mr. Great Fool in the chat section says, the more we live in the present, then the sculptor and sculpture are mirrors, based in vibration. Mr. Grateful says this. Dylan Big Crane says, I've had many dreams of falling off the Grand Canyon right before I hit the ground. I wake up and I catch myself, but in the dream it felt like hours falling, waking up. That's the interesting thing, that the experience of time in the dream state is non-existent when you wake up. It's like, where did I experience the dream? You know? Mr. Grateful says, depends if it's unknown destruction, then healing appears. Okay. Okay, Unknown Known says, what about chapter 2? You want to hear the next part? Okay, how many people want to hear the next part of the sci-fi story? Because it's a big chapter, relatively. Not that big, but, you know, it's probably going to take 10 minutes to tell. It's the chapter where the memory visits Rasoul, and it's what that memory is. Guys, my keyboard is messed up. The letter O doesn't work on my keyboard. I can't type. It's just irritating. I gotta control V every time I want to put an O. Alright, guys. This could be a little breather from the real metaphysics into science fiction metaphysics. Alright, let me see. So anyone who's followed the story so far, Rasoul is in Central Park Square on a rock. He's closed his eyes. He decided to walk towards the inconceivable Pure Lands and no longer exists as an individual being, but a memory visits him in his subtler planes. And it's a memory of his father. And in this story, people live thousands of years. Human beings don't live just hundreds of years in the year 5025. It's like they have choice. They have an incredible amount of choice. Even when Rasoul told his girlfriend, for example, Galactica, that he's leaving his body, the girlfriend wasn't the girlfriend was blind from the beginning, but she sees the presence of people. So this is the chapter. The chapter hits him. It's about his childhood, and it's this memory he gets. This memory visits Rasoul, and this memory is about his father coming to pick him up from school, and he's in school and he's a young kid. And so what happens is, the scene, if it was a film, it would begin with Rasoul in front of the, what do you call it? Sorry guys, I'm listening to such classic guitar music, it's very hard to speak. Just hang in there for a second, let me change the track. Yo, imagine I'm listening to Viking music right now. They're like, Mr. Within listens to Viking music when he gives talks. All right. Let's begin. This is the second chapter. Is when Rasul. The first chapter was very short. The second chapter is this, and so this is the memory. The memory visits and the memory speaks. I think I titled the chapter that. Rasul is a kid in this memory. There was a law that was passed. Anyways, I'll tell you that. Rasul is a kid. He's waiting outside of his school. In his school, for the first time, the society, the government at that time, had allowed AI robot kids to go to school. Okay, had allowed them. And so that when I say allowed him, that means Rasul, for the first time, had a classmate in his classroom when he was a kid that was a robot, was this AI. And you guys might not believe it. I think people will. I named the robot McKenna. Mechena. McKenna. And it was inspired out of Terence McKenna. It was kind of my tribute to him. And this robot in the break, so imagine Rasul's getting a memory, his father picking him up after school. I'm giving you a backstory of what happened when Rasul was in school. And he's a kid. So what happens is Rasul is there, and they bring a robot into the classroom. This is the backstory part to this chapter. They bring a robot into the classroom, and this is the first robot ever in a school system. And during the break, the kid is cyberbullied. The robot is cyberbullied. And what does that mean? That means with trash cans or something, with metal, with giant objects, human kids in the classroom come and start hitting this robot. But this robot, instead of fighting back, just goes to the garden and is looking for something in the garden of the school. Just endlessly, in every break, this AI robot just goes to the garden, and the AI robot is looking for these Native American mushrooms, where that would psychedelically change your consciousness. So the robot is this AI that wants to experience the soul, and all these kids hit him. Later on, you figure out this in other chapters, but I'm giving it to you now, and telling it to you now. And so what happens is Rasul, his robot buddy is there. Guys, this is a story I've created. It's in my science fiction novel. I'm sharing, I've shared it before in other lectures, but anyways, I'll continue. Guys, I can't type. My keyboard's messed up. Don't make me type. Anyways, guys, I'll honor the story for the sake of the story. I'll share it completely. So pretty much Rasul, his father comes and picks him up, and the robot kid is named McKenna, M-E-C-H though, And later on, this robot McKenna becomes one of Rasul's friends, and he becomes the leader of the robotic realms in the story. And he is also, how can I tell you, he becomes a shaman. He's like literally my psychology infused a robot with tribal personalities. You're going to notice something in this book that robots don't see humans. Humans have become like angels to robots. Only extremely wealthy billionaire robots. Robots are living like how we are living right now in the story. Human beings are living in a more enlightened way in the story. So in the memory, Rasul's father is coming to pick him up, and Rasul's father has what do you call it? This car. I don't remember what car I wrote. Chevy. It was a car my dad liked. It was, so anyways, I wrote this car. His father is coming to pick him up. Now I did something ingenious. His father comes to pick him up in the car, and his father is manually driving. And remember, I said this is in the year 5025, and people live thousands of years in this. Okay? So what happens is they set out a law that made cars no longer illegal to be automated. As if the people of the world decided we've had enough of just being driven to places, we want to drive ourselves. right? And so Rasul, his father's coming to pick him up with a car. The father's driving, even though it's sci-fi in the future. Rasul comes and sits down into the car, and the car, instead of windows, has these force field wavering light windows where nothing from the inside can come. Nothing from the outside can be pushed inside the car. It will be vaporized because of the window, but the hand of the person can instantly go. The hand of the person can go from inside. So it's like these force field windows to cars. Guys, I'm not joking. This is one of the most incredible chapters I've written. If I hope people are taking it in, because what I'm gonna tell you next, I think you've never ever heard on this planet be said before. I'm not joking. I feel no one has ever heard any story like this. But and who knows how long the breath will linger in the biology. Rasul enters, comes and sits in the car, and his father's like, "How was your day?" And Rasul, there's something on his mind. And his father, if I remember correctly, he says, "I see you made a new friend today." And that's where Rasul says he was robo-racially bullied today, you know? And to his father, he says this. And Rasul says, "I don't understand why this world is so cruel. I don't understand why people fight." It's like, where was the definition? Where was the idea? Something Rasul says, and then his father. I remember I wrote here when Rasul's father knew when Rasul talked like this, there was something deeper on his mind. And Rasul's father, you're gonna later on realize, he's like this incredible, like doctor dash medium, you know. Rasul says that his father says, "Rasul, when you were young, your mother had a vision when you were being born, in the while you were kind of being born, your mother had a vision, and I had the same vision in a dream. So both the mother and father had the same dream of their child." Remember, the title of the book is called "The Messenger of Giants." And so Rasul is there, and his father says, "In that dream, you're standing on this hill, and beside you there are giants where we cannot. They're so huge that we cannot see like you can't see the head of the giant, you know." And Rasul suddenly, guys, Rasul says, "Dad," something like this. He said, "It's like his Rasul's personality is changing," and then Rasul says something like, "Oh gosh, what was it? What was it? Oh man." Before he changes, what does he say? Sorry, guys, just hang in there for a second until I pinpoint this in my inner realms. Rasul's father tells the vision, he had, is both Rasul's mother and him had, and he says something about Rasul. You are meant for greater things. His father's kind of encouraging his son's destiny. And then that's where, guys, let's take this part. This was the ingenious. This was the masterpiece of this chapter. Okay? Suddenly I write Rasul's uh, future self from the 32nd dimension. Rasul's future self from the 32nd dimension, which is this star kind of galactic general, suddenly comes into Rasul's consciousness and speaks to his father. So Rasul's future self comes into his personality, becomes his future self, and his future self talks to his father and explains the dream to his father, and says that you don't, when Rasul looks at himself, he doesn't see Rasul to want to lead man, he sees himself as a galaxy. And later on in the story you realize this is the first incarnation where the main character has become human. His past life, he was a galaxy. He was a galaxy. And that's the intense thing that this person, that's the thing that he kind of very, in a sci-fi way, channels his future self from the 32nd dimension. I don't know why I wrote 32nd, but I just went with the riff of the moment when I was writing it. And so what happened was that the future self comes and says something to Bismillah, and then Bismillah says something to Rasul's future self. And suddenly, kind of like I got inspired by Lord of the Rings when Gandalf suddenly doesn't become, what do you call it? Like when Gandalf got angry at Frodo, like the color tone of the room changed, the lighting of the room changed. So there is something like that happening in the car. And then suddenly at the end of it, as the future self of Rasul is done talking to Rasul's father in the car, the future self leaves, and it's Rasul in the car, and things come back to a normal state, and Rasul's father is just, his eyes are teared up, he's shocked as a human being, you know? Guys, when mysteries are explained, that is a sort of hidden gift. That is the greatest gift that the world can give itself. So anyways, guys, that was the chapter. Later on, I say something that McKenna goes on making a huge contribution that makes him the leader of the robotic realms. And he says that if through nanotechnology, robots were made to have, in some sense, sort of kind of similar to human-like organs, for example, like they had the robot had a stomach, and it could, for example, consume I don't know, ayahuasca like the shamans did, it could get some sort of experience of something more than a soul. In the whole story, there's a theme of robots constantly. And I forgot to tell you something. In the first, in the chapter before, where Rasul goes, before he goes and sits on the rock, there is a robot that comes and meets him in a Porsche. And this robot he's wearing a suit and the whole Porsche golden robot, and he comes to Rasul and he introduces himself as Astoros. And Astoros, he's this richest robot in the robot realms, in the robotic realms. In this story, guys, I've given myself ultimate permission for all contexts. So there's aliens, there's angels, there's parallel realities, there is reincarnation, there is beings coming back from the future to assist the past. So many various things are allowed. Asteros comes to Rasul and says, what is there more to life than following the program you find yourself in? And Asteros asks Rasul, how do you have a soul? And Rasul gives a teaching to this AI, to this Asteros in the scene, where he says the only way you Asteros robots can have a soul is that they should go to their creators and try to copy how their creators were. When the robot if the robot records enough human behavior, the robot will be able to at least find patterns of the soul, you know? So anyways, guys, that was the story. That was the chapter. This work is in progress, but what can I say? The whole world is in progress, you know? The whole, all, life is constantly like this endless coming soon preview, but it never comes. Why? Because the future is designed to be ahead of you. The past is designed to be behind you, and only in the present moment is there the greatest ability to navigate subjectivity. When you can accept, and I never mentioned the four dimensions of the ring of the absent heaven. The ring of this absent heaven, you can say it's this model I've designed, Mr. Within's view on the dimensions of this world. 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, infinite dimension. I've just divided it in 4 to make it simple, and I've used mathematical language to make it universal. 0 means space. In this life, dear child of humanity, acknowledge the empty space. There's a lot of it everywhere. There is space everywhere. Every time you fail or any issue, you can always go to a new space and begin again. You know, so there is space. And the awareness of space is absence. You see what I'm saying? It's absence. So once you are comfortable with the absence, how there is space between the sentences that gives the words, gives the sentence structure, gives the sentence a structure. You know, it's the wind between the branches that moves the leaves of knowledge, you know? When you become comfortable with the nature of stuff not being here, and it's very easy. I want every human being to try this. And make sure you do it carefully, though. Go get a small plate, a plate you've had for many years, a ceramic plate, a china plate, and I want you to go hold this on like above an area. Look at how your hand, just close your eyes and feel how the plate is in your hand. Then drop the plate and let it break on the ground, and then feel your hand and look at the plate. And then you'll realize that just like how in this life you had an ability to hold on to stuff, you also have an ability to let go of stuff. Think of it this way. How do you move in a world? Like, how do you move in front of your eyes? You see a self, and then this self moves in the three-dimensional space-time continuum. Now, how do you move in the inner realm? You see an individual, you find your attention. Your attention is like the body behind your eyes. And once you notice that attention, it's like your eyes behind your eyes. Is the sight behind your eyes. There we go. So once you notice you're being a presence of attention, it all starts from there. It all starts from there. When you can see you're a presence of attention before you were a thought, where you can see you were the presence of attention as a child before you learned language, that we enter this world through silence. Even though the child is not silent, its mind is. The mind is an incredible observer, and it has incredibly observed your life so far. And so there's 2 ways. There's always 2 paths. You look at what is in front of you, and you look at what else can be. And for me, the inner realms are attempts of man to go beyond the clouds of the inner sky. That means the same way it was fascinating that a spaceship for the first time went beyond the clouds of our atmosphere and went beyond, and we got a picture of the Earth. That was a holy shit moment. Now imagine The same thing, same feeling, same excitement of a spaceship going beyond the clouds somewhere where we've never been before. Imagine the human experience, the attention of the experiencer behind your eyes going beyond language, going beyond image, marching forth towards the unknown. For what is there? For why is the bird given wings? You know, I remember I wrote this short story I tried to personify, and it was a tribute to my brother's work. I consider, to be honest, I have a twin brother. I consider him to be the greatest novelist on this planet. And but you might not believe it, but my science fiction was a tribute to how his novels inspired me. But the attention has to engage the unknown, or it won't know anything else. There's no such thing as a comfort zone or introvert, extrovert. There's no such thing. You're just in a weird looking at something. You're being a moment of sight, and there's known variables and unknown variables. And if you want to keep having your attention on the known variable, okay, Jesse, I'll tell you the story in a sentence. Pretty much, there's a main character, the dude that was on the rock, who was getting sort of trying to leave his body. He gets a memory of his father picking him up after school. He has a robotic classmate. The robotic classmate was bullied. The robotic classmate was based on McKenna, Terrence McKenna. Rasul comes into the car where his father is. There was a law passed that made cars automated again. And in the car, there's a deep conversation where Rasul says his robotic classmate was robo-racially bullied. And because the robotic classmate was bullied, Rasul is saying, why is the nature of the world like this? And suddenly his father tells him a vision that at the same time when Rasul was in the womb and his father was sleeping, they both had the same vision of Rasul. Rasul says that vision to his son. Rasul's he's a child in the memory, but his future self from the 32nd dimension comes and talks to his father. His father gets stunned. There's an intense moment, and that's the end of the chapter. He kind of realizes he has more work to do while he's still manifest as an individual. You know, some people can say it's like, yo, man, you know, that yogi was so enlightened, conscious waking state was like his office. You know, it's like you don't live in your office, you work there, and then you leave and go somewhere else, you know. Nature doesn't need an explanation. It will go forth regardless of the idea you have on it. This is why the value of our minds is how much the inner realm can readjust the outer realm, because you got to think about it this way. What is the service of man? That means usually most people in this life, they want to be served. You know, they want to get the most luxurious state of life, and they're like, you know, everything come to me, you know. But many people don't realize that the value in life is serving, because we're like energy. This very well spoken, very wise rabbi who was also a scientist said something that we are packets of energy. And so if you think of yourself as a battery life, you're like, what is this battery going to? And if it just goes to your inner realms, you only made one human being get through this plane of existence. It's the responsibility of the greater humanity that calls to us as we wonder why we're here, you know? And that there's, let me tell you, you are here to build Lego, but this Lego has become an advanced civilization. And that is really it. That is the joy of living. That you step into an environment, you see what it is, your mind shows you a different picture, and you begin dancing like an artist where your mind was the brush. And I'm telling you, it's like that's the mystery of the polymath mind. And the mystery of the polymath mind that people are like, yo, how did Da Vinci, how could Da Vinci, you know, be a great painter, be a great writer, be a, I don't know, scientist, be an inventor, be a poet, be a da 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 da. How could he be so able in so many avenues? Let me tell you why. Because he understood the light beams of the sun come from one sun. When you realize that intelligence is the moment, it is not a relationship of some content with other content in the moment. Knowledge is not my coffee cup compared to like my computer. It's not contents in the moment that can make the whole moment feel content. It is only the experiencer that has to smile upon realizing that the self was here before the world, but that self is not an image. So when you become aware of your presence, you fire up. When you fire up, you hear the voice of the world. When you hear the voice of the world, the logos is like, holy shit, this guy's ears is open. The logos whispers in your ear. The logos is not some sort of ignorance beyond the veil. It is not some deception beyond the veil. Let me tell you, you deceive yourself when you in some sense don't stop being aware of where you are. That's it. When you can trust your world trusts you. And then ability is no longer an individual trying to overcome a struggle. Who made that analogy the best analogy? Why break when you're trying to fix the world? When we wonder about what a memory is, we are actually looking at a relationship of a subject with an object. Anytime time comes into the picture, time is a subject. Time is the additional dimension. And we have people like Plato saying time is the moving image of eternity. We have people like Einstein saying we created time so everything doesn't happen all at once. But Mr. Within will say, you have time, there is time when you have the time. When you have the time to have time, there's time. If you don't have the time to have time, that means if you are actually realizing on some level you're just energy. It's like on your resume. I'm energy, everything is energy. Energy is working for energy. That's between the years of 2014 to 16. I had a relationship with my intuition where I did not have an image, I did not see a face, but I could feel that the way my attention was present in the moment was different. And that intuition was a strange assistance. It was as if like my soul was like backing up my mind, you know, and my mind was backing up my body. It's like anything my mind had not perceived, the eyes of the soul had, strangely. And the eyes of the soul are not a concept, they're not an image. That means this is the most spiritual idea. You're not an image. There we go. It's like it doesn't get more spiritual than that. Okay. So thanks for listening, everyone. I'm gonna open up the Discord, so I'm gonna share the link here, and the talk pretty much at this point is gonna end, and I'm gonna be in the Discord server if anybody wants to join. And I recommend it's like treat the Discord server as a school of Athens. That means it's like a bunch of human beings trying to figure out what's going on in this world. Alright, so let me see the link. Alright. So again, thanks everyone for listening. You can find me on Discord. I'm not gonna end the talk. Okay, I'm gonna keep it here. I'm gonna keep my voice here. Just whoever's listening, if you're listening from this point on, you're gonna just hear my random responses to the Discord server, unless I could somehow get the audio of people. It might be too much of a hassle, actually. Okay, guys, I'll do something. Until people join the Discord, I'm gonna open up Q&A in case anybody has a question or wants a second opinion on something. Ah, guys, I think I know what I should do. I'm going to show you the screen here, which means the Discord. So, okay, how do I do this? Okay, guys, so Discord is running. There's people here, but I don't know how we connect. I think people have to click on the general part. How do I do this? Hello? Hello? Is this thing working? Okay, welcome, man. Welcome. Okay, this is the first Discord event, you know. Nothing, man, gone.